So, what if the biggest threat in a war isn't the enemy at all, but your own flawed strategy? That's the huge question we're tackling today by breaking down Professor John Mearsheimer's analysis of a potential war with Iran. He argues this conflict is built on a strategy that is, well, fundamentally broken. And right off the bat, Professor Mearsheimer does not mince words. He says, "My sense is that we're in trouble." He believes that despite all the official optimism you hear, the United States might be walking right into a strategic trap, one with no clear way out. The core problem, he says, isn't about firepower. It's about not having a goal you can actually achieve. And that really gets to the heart of it, right? How can you possibly win a war if you don't even have a clear idea of what victory looks like? We're about to dive into why Mearsheimer is convinced that the publicly stated goals of this war are just a smokescreen for something much bigger and honestly a lot more dangerous. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the sales pitch. You know how it goes. Every big military action is sold to the public with this vision of a clean, quick success. And this one's no different. The message is simple. We're going to be effective, and victory is right around the corner. I mean, you can't get much more confident than that, can you? This is the kind of thing you hear from the very top. Secretary Hegseth is painting a picture of overwhelming force leading to a super rapid and successful end. It's a message that's designed to make everyone feel confident and project strength. But what does this victory actually mean? Well, on paper, the official goals look pretty straightforward. Take out Iran's ballistic missiles, shut down their nuclear program for good, and cut off their funding to groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. These all seem like concrete military targets, which makes the whole plan sound solid and totally achievable. But this is where the story starts to fall apart. See, according to Mearsheimer, those three public goals, they're almost impossible to achieve, and more importantly, to sustain with just military force. And that leads him to a pretty powerful conclusion about what the real, unstated goal of this whole thing is. And this is the core of the problem. Think about it. Iran could just rebuild its nuclear sites and missile factories after the bombing stops. They could keep funding their proxies. The only way to permanently stop them, Mearsheimer argues, is to get rid of the government that wants those things in the first place. So suddenly, this isn't a limited military strike. The real war is for regime change. And that is the billion-dollar question. If regime change is what you're actually after, you have to have a solid plan for what comes next. Right? Who's going to take over? How do you keep the country from collapsing into chaos? And what if you end up with someone who's even worse? And get this. This quote from President Trump himself just says it all. It is shockingly honest. He's openly worrying that there's no guarantee of a better outcome, and he even admits that any good potential leaders to replace the current regime are probably already dead. This just exposes a massive hole in the plan. There's no real post-war strategy, which is the most important part of any successful regime change. All right, so the ultimate goal is looking, well, pretty shaky. Let's turn to the main tool they're using to try and achieve it, the air campaign. The first phase of this war is all about air power, and if you listen to the official reports, things are going great. You hear these glowing reports, right? Secretary Hegseth has practically doing a victory lap. He's boasting about tactical win after tactical win. The Iranian Navy is gone, their air force is basically useless, the US and its allies own the skies. These are definite, measurable military victories. But Mearsheimer's response to all this chest thumping, it's just two words: so what? He argues that all these wins on the battlefield mean absolutely nothing if they don't get you closer to your real political goal. Sinking ships doesn't topple a government. This is the classic trap of winning all the battles, but still losing the war. As Mearsheimer points out, the US won every single battle in Vietnam, but, they lost the war. In this case, controlling the sea and air is a nice tactical win, for sure. But the strategic reality? The regime in Tehran is still sitting there, firmly in power. And history just backs this up, time and time again. You look at World War II, massive bombing campaigns couldn't break Germany or Japan without a full-ground invasion. And here's the kicker. Iran itself is unbelievably resilient. In their war with Iraq, they took hundreds of thousands of casualties and never once collapsed. The idea that an air campaign alone is going to break them, well, it just doesn't seem to line up with history. So the air campaign isn't achieving that big strategic goal of regime change. The pressure starts to build to do something more. And this is where the strategy shifts into a new and way riskier phase, trying to start a civil war inside Iran. You can really see this as an escalation ladder. Step 1, making threats. That failed. Step 2, a decapitation strike.
It killed a leader, but the regime didn't collapse. Now, step 3, the air campaign, has stalled out strategically, so the U.S. is being forced to climb to the next and most dangerous rung on the ladder, trying to start an insurrection.
But wow, this idea is just a total house of cards. It is riddled with huge risks and contradictions. For example, arming Kurdish groups would make Turkey, a NATO ally, furious. Even crazier, there are reports that the U.S. is bombing the exact same Kurdish areas they might need to turn into allies. It's a strategic disaster, and that's before you even get to the fact that, as Trump admitted, there's no clear opposition group to support anyway.
Now, let's pull back from the battlefield for a second, because the fallout from this war goes way beyond Iran. A long, messy conflict there doesn't happen in a vacuum. It sends massive shockwaves through America's strategic position all over the globe.
I mean, think about it. The U.S. is already stretched incredibly thin, right? Supporting Ukraine, getting ready for a potential fight over Taiwan, and now you add a major war in Iran to the mix. It puts this unbelievable strain on the defense industry, which a lot of people say was already run down after the Cold War. You just can't be a superpower everywhere at once, especially when you're running low on ammo. And for America's rivals, countries like China and Russia, watching the U.S. get bogged down in another costly, draining war in the Middle East is, as Mearsheimer calls it, manna from heaven. It's the best gift they could possibly ask for. It sucks up American money, attention, and political will that could be focused elsewhere. The U.S. focus is just dangerously split. Instead of concentrating its power, America is trying to juggle these huge commitments in Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia, all while trying to police its own hemisphere. When you're spread that thin, you're not strong anywhere. And this is where it gets really serious. Mearsheimer draws a straight line between a long war in Iran and the safety of Taiwan. A distracted America, an America that's used up its best weapons, creates a massive window of opportunity for China. The longer the U.S. is stuck in the Middle East, he argues, the more danger Taiwan is in. So we're left with this final, really critical question. The initial plan isn't working, and that's forcing the U.S. up this escalation ladder, where every single step is riskier than the last. Mearsheimer's analysis suggests that there might not be some magic winning strategy waiting at the top of that ladder. There might only be the potential for a strategic disaster with consequences for the entire world. Is this even a winnable war?